how do you get so much done? And I say, I have the greatest VA in the world. I've got a great team, KP and Stacy, and I'm always talking about the three of you, but today we're focusing on you. And I would say, oh, I got the greatest VA. And they say, well, what's a VA? And I say, a virtual assistant. And then they say, where does she live? And I say, Ohio.
Right.
Right. They're thinking, it's going to be. And so, but you are multifaceted. You are an entrepreneur. There's so many elements of things that we can talk about today. So I want to start off talking about you, and at the end we'll talk a little bit about how we work together, because I think people can learn some stuff from that as well. But but today we talked about wanting to talk about marketing, and so there's so many different tentacles of marketing. I'm a big believer, especially in the market that we're in right now, that there's no more important time to be marketing, no more important time to understand your messaging, and really double, triple, and quadruple your marketing efforts. I was talking to my business coach this morning, and you've known since this all happened kind of mid-March, I've doubled my marketing.
For sure.
And so what I talked to him today was, you may not want to hear this. He said, all right, now it's time to double it again.
Nice.
And so for you, let's I'm going to give you the floor a little bit, but let's talk marketing for a little bit.
Yeah. So what I do both, with our agency, we serve entrepreneurs, service-based entrepreneurs. And then also through my business mentoring is I teach people how to build resilient businesses. And part of what that means for your marketing is really picking a lane and sticking to what you do well and not getting lost in all of the shiny objects, right? It's so easy to see what, this person's doing over here, that person's doing over there.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making even now, and actually especially now, is they're waiting for other people to tell them how they should be marketing their business. And now is the time to be innovative, and to really go deep into your strategy, and really be talking to your clients and figuring out what they need, and then being flexible enough to shift your offerings to meet them where they're at.
Let's talk about innovative, because I think sometimes people don't understand what that word means, because a lot of companies, and we see this all the time, are stuck in 2000, 2005, a lot stuck in 2008, right?
Yeah.
And some stuck in like 2015. And a lot has changed over the last 2 decades. And so what does, so somebody listening now or later, what does innovative, how do you define it?
It really comes, I think, from, I'm a little woo-woo, and it really comes from that intuition within you. It's saying, what do I really feel like my clients need?
Yeah.
I'm hearing them talking, I'm seeing this need, and I see that I have this knowledge that I can bring to them. How can I do that in a way that nobody else is doing it right now? And instead of second guessing yourself of thinking, oh, I shouldn't try that because nobody else is doing it, and what if I fail? This is really the time to try it, because you've really got a captive audience right now, to really try some new things and to see what works.
Well, and I don't think it's woo-woo at all. I mean, intuition, I feel like I'm very intuitive in what I'm doing on a daily basis, and not doing what everybody else isn't doing sometimes is the best thing to do, because a lot of times people just don't have the courage to actually A, do it, and B, reverse engineer what needs to be done, and then commit to the consistent process of actually doing it. So let's kind of jump in there, right? So we got this idea. Every idea, if you reverse engineer it, is hard work to not only do it, produce it, but also be consistent with it. So kind of fill in the blanks there.
Well, I think consistency is the key, right? You can have a great idea and you can even kind of think, this is how I need to do it. But I think that that's one of the reasons why you need to have a team, because a lot of entrepreneurs are these big picture thinkers. They can have these great ideas, but in order to bring them to life, a lot of the time to achieve that consistency that you want, you need to have support, because they're the ones who are going to help you do it consistently, or they're going to pester you if you didn't do what you said you needed to do so you can get it done.
Right. Or if you don't reply to their email, they'll just do it because they know stuff needs to just get done.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that, the team, right? So, because I think this is really a big piece. My team consists of about 7 people. And the primary people are you and KP and Stacy, right?
Mhm.
And we've got a bunch of other people too, but you guys are the main people. And it allows me to be consistent in what I do, but we're pretty ahead of schedule. So one of the things I think is so important when you're working with a team is a couple things. Your team has got to feel like they are important and they have a voice. You can't be a jerk and use the word ASAP. You have to surrender and allow your team to tell you what they think is best, because sometimes you're too close to it.
Mhm.
And you have to have a high level of respect and trust for your team, and help and allow them to set timelines that work for them.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a recipe. And then, so what do you think the recipe is?
I think the recipe is allowing everybody to work in their zone of genius.
Yeah.
So, one of the things we do in my agency is we don't just have one person working with one client. I allow my team to work in their zone of genius and we work together.
Yeah.
And that's what I teach in for my mentoring students as well, is you need to figure out what you do really, really well. And a lot of the time it's the thing that feels easiest. I think we think it has to be hard,
So true.
but it's really the thing that you love doing. It's the first thing you want to check off on your to-do list.
Yeah.
And if you're working in that zone of genius, then you're going to be producing amazing results. And it's not going to feel hard. It's not going to feel difficult. And especially for a lot of my mentoring students who have chronic illnesses like me, it's really important to bring that sense of joy to it, because that's really what's going to keep you motivated to come to your computer even when you're having an awful day.
Yeah. That is so well said. To stay in your unique abilities, to stay in your zone and your place of genius is so important. But I see that all the time too. People think, well, this comes so naturally to me that, this is something I'm exceptional at, so this can't be it. But really, that is it, right?
Yeah.
It's so simple, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Right. And so now let's kind of take it to the next level. So how do you work as a team and surrender to allow everybody else to actually do what they need to do, and then create the structure around it? Because I think that's our part where people get in people's way.
And I think it's about leadership. It's about having the solid person on your team, whether, one of the things I do is I'm an online business manager. So I'm going into 6- and 7-figure businesses and leading their teams. And it's about having that one person who can kind of really hold everybody to this is what we all agreed to do. I know this is your zone of genius. What do you need to be successful? I think it's not about telling them, this is exactly what you need to do and how I want you to do it, but it's how can I equip you to be successful in the thing that we decided to do together.
Right. And having that one person, basically what I'm hearing you say is to hold everybody accountable.
Yes.
Somebody's got to take ownership.
Right. Whether it's the business owner or whether you know that that's not your zone of genius and you want somebody else to do it for you.
Right.
It's making sure that there is one person on the team who is keeping track of the moving pieces and it's empowering the team to do what they need to do.
I love it. Let's jump back into marketing for a minute, because there's so many tentacles of marketing. There's so many different social platforms. Messaging on each of them have to be just a little bit different. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. Talk a little bit about the different tentacles that people should be thinking about today.
I think people work harder than they need to on social media. I think not enough people are leveraging, repurposing their content.
Yeah.
So it's something that, John, you do beautifully, but it's the idea that you take one core piece of content, like a podcast or a blog post, and you repurpose it in your email marketing, your social media marketing. You find different ways to tweak it so it's appropriate for the place that you're posting it. But we know that people do not consume information in the same place. So somebody who's on your email list reading your emails is probably not going to follow your Instagram stories, and they're not maybe going to be watching this Facebook Live, right? People consume information in different places, but they need to hear something multiple times.
Right.
So people are working harder than they need to.
How many times?
They say that it takes 7 times for somebody to buy. I think that if you can hit them 3 or 4 times, if they can see it in different ways, you're doing a good job.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot. Yeah, so go ahead. So I didn't mean to stop you, but I think I agree with you. Repurposing your content, because we work on it a lot together. I'll do a podcast and then turn that podcast into a blog.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so talk about what are some more ways that people can repurpose it, and how do you repurpose it on different platforms differently?
Well, and that's really where, if that's not your zone of genius, it's really where I recommend you bring somebody in to help you with that, because there is a strategy, and the strategy is different for every business. It depends on who you're targeting and how you're targeting them. One mistake I see a lot of people making is they get frustrated because they don't have the vanity metrics that they want, right? They're putting out all this content, say on Instagram, and they don't have as many followers as they think that they want to have. And they get really frustrated by it. And then they're like, I'm not going to, post anymore there because I'm not getting the traction that I want. And one of the things in any content strategy, whether you're repurposing or putting out fresh content, you really need to be focused on the engagement level and giving people what they need. If you're not listening, if you're not in the comment section, if you're not engaging with your community, you're not going to put out content that really meets that need, and it's not going to convert into leads for your business.
Right. But Nicole, let's dive into that a little bit, because I have some thoughts on that as well. People get too consumed with likes and followers, in my opinion, because it doesn't really matter. It's all about the ambassadors that are part of you. Are they doing business with you? Are they referring you business? And also sometimes, you think, well, wow. Right. So I'll just use an example, right? Mm-hmm. So I just interviewed last week, Joran Rubin. She's an attorney, right? So so that post had 20 comments. It had, I think, 3, 4, 5 shares and a couple hundred views. Right. Mm-hmm. That's great. Where else can you get, right? And some of those are replies. Where else can you? So that's 10 people or so talking in comments, right? Back and forth. That's multiple people sharing on their platforms, of each person having thousands of people. Mm-hmm. That's a ton of eyes on it. And so we get lost in, everybody thinking they want to have Gary V numbers in everything that they do. And that's not realistic. So it's the drip game. And just going back to consistency, to me, it's gotta be consistently, dripping, and focus on the ambassadors of people who are really talking, who really want to hear your message, versus that woman who had 2 million followers, give or take, and she couldn't sell 10 t-shirts. Remember that story?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So it's about the quality, not the quantity.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's also about being strategic. Like, for example, if I was working with a client and I saw that they had a live stream that was getting a lot of traction like that, I would say, okay, what did you talk about? How can we take the juiciest pieces of that video and maybe, edit them down into 60-second snippets and pop them on Instagram? Right. How can I, look at the people that it's reaching, how can I reach out to them and say, hey, how are you doing? I noticed you resonated with this. I'd love to talk to you about what you took away from it. It's taking something that works and figuring out how to take it a step farther.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about, any more elements about marketing you want to chat about?
No.
Let's talk about your podcast. You have a podcast.
Yeah.
It is great. I hope I get this right. Is the Spoonerpreneur?
Spoonypreneur.
Yeah. All right. Tell us about it.
So I am an entrepreneur living with chronic illness. I have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and bipolar disorder. And as I was building my agency, a lot of people started asking me, how are you doing this with everything you have on your plate? And what I realized was 2 things. Number one, I had, a system that I could teach to other people and show them how to do it themselves. But also that there are so many people out there who are living with chronic illness and who are killing it in business. And I wanted people to see their stories, because I think it's really important to feel like you're not alone. So that's why I created the podcast. It's an entrepreneurship podcast, and it features only people who are living with chronic illness and who are running a business.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's I love that you do that. My mom was an amazing mind. She passed away, 20 some years ago. She had a lung disease. And so she was, yada, yada, yada. But I always thought, God, she would have been such an amazing business person. I mean, she was a stay-at-home mom. And especially after we got older and, she just had such a brilliant mind. And so I wish I could have a time machine and send you back and
Yeah.
and just kind of help her figure out that thing. And so it's a beautiful niche that you have. And so to the person who's home right now with, fibromyalgia, with you name, it doesn't matter what it is, thinking, how do I even get started? How do I even make that first step to even start a business when I feel like I have no energy?
I think it's figuring out, going back to your zone of genius, figuring out what you love to do, what skills you bring to the table, and how you can serve people with that. One of the beautiful things about creating a done for you business is that all you have to have is your skill set and a laptop, right? And as long as you're doing things consistently in your business, you're going to see growth. And I think something that trips up a lot of people is, whether you have a chronic illness or not, is they think that consistency has to look like I'm posting every day, in a million different places. I'm showing up all the time. You get to figure out what consistency means for you. As long as you're holding to your idea of consistency and showing up, you will see results.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that is so true, because I think consistency wrapped with some level of predictability is really important. So if consistency for you is every other Tuesday at 2:00, do a posting, that's 2 a month, that's 24 a year, it starts to not feel as overwhelming.
Yes.
But it's the predictability, not to just do one on random Tuesday and one on a random Thursday. The predictability starts building a following.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially, so let's talk about that. How do you promote predictability, right? Because there's accountability in that, right? So there's accountability. So, we've been doing lives and it's, Monday through Friday, 12 to 12:30. Well, now I'm held accountable to a time where I normally do my podcast when I want and air them when I want. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think that especially when you're living with chronic illness, consistency has to look a little different. I would probably never say I'm going to show up daily from 12 to 12:30, because I know that if I'm having a bad day, that might not happen. But I can say I commit to putting out this many social media posts a week. I commit to, recording this many videos a week. And it doesn't matter when I do it or how I do it, as long as I'm consistently putting things out, consistently showing up, I'm doing what I need to do to market my business.
Yeah. I'm just putting this here as a note. Okay. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So now let's talk about your podcast. What can people expect when they listen to your podcast?
So it's a really nice mix of, I like to take people behind the scenes in my business just to show them, what's going on right now, what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking about. Because one of the things I think people, when they think about becoming their own boss, they think about starting a business, it can feel really overwhelming and kind of, you don't even know where to start. You don't even know what to do. And I know for me, when I was starting out, was the podcast, the blog posts where people showed me what it looked like for them, kind of gave me that. I'm not necessarily going to copy what they did, but it's going to give me an idea of where to start. And so that's really what I want to do for people, is to inspire them to start, or if they're, well in their journey, to give them ideas of things that they might try that they haven't thought about yet.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, because when I'm coaching people, it doesn't matter if you're starting a business or starting just a new mindset, right? They're kind of one and the same in many respects. Yeah. And and for those who follow my stuff, I always say think big, but to me, defining think big is doing the small things every day that consistently compound to something big.
Yeah.
And so when you're starting, I'm going to make the suggestion that you start really small, day by day, right? You do what you mentally can do. Look at especially right now in the market that we're in, like, what are you going to do for the week, right? And then know what you got to do every single day. You don't have to be thinking about 5 years out always, right? And especially right now, it's about, what are you doing for the day? What are you doing for the week? And then if you're listening to this right now, it's, what's your 90-day plan for the summer, so you can stay intact over the summer, so you can start really, really solid when the fall hits.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the advice that I'm giving to people right now when it comes to thinking about consistency in marketing is, you want to create a strategy that is broad enough that you can go deep. So for example, if you know that your audience is on Instagram, your strategy is going to go full in on Instagram, but you're going to need to tweak it as you go along. You may learn that, videos in your stories work really well, or people love IGTV. And you can pivot a little bit based on what people need and what you're hearing really works. But you want to have that consistent strategy, because we know it can take up to 90 days for a strategy to start working. And if you go for a few weeks and you say, I feel like I'm talking to myself, it's crickets, I don't like doing this, and you stop, you are never going to get traction doing anything.
Right. And it's easy to convince yourself, I don't mean to sound like this, I really don't talk. It's easy to convince yourself that you are a loser. I don't know. You know what I mean? I've done Instagram lives. Like I just started doing my tips, which I normally do recorded, then promote. I'm doing them live now. But sometimes I'll do an occasional, and I'm going to start doing more, where I'll do live business coaching on Instagram randomly. I'm not even like, promoting, really promoting it. And like 3 people show up, and then one's like my son's friend, and it's like, then they drop off, and one more person. But the key is, and this is where I'm going to start doing it, I haven't, is you have to build it and do it consistently, and build the followers one at a time.
Yep.
And you have to be patient, and you have to be kind to yourself and your future self, knowing you want to know what the end is, and then you reverse engineer and you get your ego out of it. Talk a little bit about that. With marketing, you got to trust your gut and intuition, like you said, and then get your ego out of it.
Yes. And I think that that's where it helps to have a coach or a mentor, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because those moments where you're like, I don't feel like doing this, I feel like it's crickets, I'm ready to give up. You need to have that person you can say that to, and they can look at you and say, no, that that's not the truth. This is hard, and to give you that encouragement too, and accountability.
Yeah.
My coach will sometimes say, hey, did you do this today?
Right.
What is that looking like for you this week? And it's that accountability piece that can be helpful too.
Yeah, no, accountability is so big. All right. So what else? I know you're, let's talk a little bit about how we work, because I think a lot of people can, learn from that. We've been working together for how many years now? 3, maybe?
I think it's like 2.5. Yeah.
2.5, 3 years. You've been the greatest. I think this is actually the longest face-to-face conversation we've ever had. I mean, we typically are emailing quick 2-minute, conference calls, and maybe like once a quarter we're getting like on a group call for 15 minutes. We're pretty efficient. So instead of me saying how we work, I rather you say how we work, so people, because it's so working with you is so seamless and easy. With you, with KP, with Stacy, with everybody on the team, I never feel like I have to email something out and then put on my to-do list. Like I never am writing like follow up with blah, blah, blah about blah, 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 because it all gets done. So can you just kind of talk about how, maybe that dynamic works with us, so that way people can learn from that?
Yeah. One of the things I love that we get to do with you a lot is podcasting, John, because it's like my favorite thing to do for clients.
Yeah, it's fun.
But it's a lot of organization. And so I think that the key to having a successful relationship with your VA is communicating what you need and letting them tell you what's possible and when it's possible by.
Right.
I think a lot of people have unrealistic expectations of, I'm going to tell you I need something and I expect it to be done by the end of the day.
Right.
And the reality is, working with a virtual assistant, we're not your employee. We are often juggling several different clients. And so, letting us tell you, hey, I see that this needs to be done by Friday. I can have it done by Thursday morning. How does that sound?
Yeah.
It's that relationship versus that employee and boss relationship. It's a different mindset for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the overall thing is, and you could say this more than I can say this, is just don't be a jerk. Right. I mean, I mean, your team is so important. You guys are all so important to me. One of the things, and I've trained myself over the years on this is, like with the podcast, when we went 7 days a week, and I gave you hundreds and hundreds of files. And then I said to you, right, you tell me what your time frame is. Right. And so, and I think it's having that mutual respect and trust, and being able to hear no, right? Because sometimes I'll say, hey, can we do this? Can you do this? Can you? And you'll say, no, that's not in your best interest. We can replace this with this. This is what's right. Because you're paying attention to stuff behind the scenes that I'm not, and that I know you have my back on. So I think it's important to be open for feedback. Your VA, if you have the right VA or the right people on your team, you don't want a team of yes people. You want a team of saying hey, that's not in your best interest. You may want to think it like this. And I think I'm a good student in the sense of I usually conform really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So. And I think that's, if you're thinking about hiring a VA, that's something that you really need to keep in mind. You want somebody who's working in their zone of genius. You want somebody who knows their stuff and who's not just going to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this half-heartedly and give it back to you.
Right.
There's a really a big difference between somebody who takes pride in their work and who treats other people's businesses as their own, right, and somebody who just kind of shows up like a content farm and just gives you things and doesn't think about it.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Nicole, you're the greatest. Quick speed round. You ready?
Okay, sure.
All right. What have you been doing for fun during this, lockdown, even though we're coming out of it a bit?
Well, so I'm pretty much homebound because of my health issues. So we have been working on our deck and getting it, kind of spruced up so that we can sit out there and kind of relax, which is
oh, that's relaxing. Yeah, we've gotten furniture for our backyard, our front yard, right? Yeah, which has been great. Any good books?
Oh, I have been reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed, and it has just been transformative. It's just amazing. If you're, into her stuff, you need to go out and read it.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, Nicole, I can't thank you enough. You have been a huge asset to me and the growth of my business. My business on June 1st will be 5 years that I started it. 5 years ago. Yeah. I mean, and it has flown by, and I'm a big believer that if you want to be great, you have to have great people around you, and you cannot settle. And you are great, and you and everybody else, and they know who I'm talking about. I'm so grateful for the people that I get to work with every day. So thank you for all that you do for me, and to everybody listening. Don't settle, right? I mean, don't settle. I mean, that's the key. Train up your people and invest in your people. And having a business mentor is critical. Tell people how they can get a hold of you, Nicole.
Best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is @TheResilientVA.
All right. Nicole, you're awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope this helps you grow your business.
Thanks, John.